Hello YouTube, my name is Isabella and today I'm bringing to you part 2 of my extra super large catching up book haul. So this is part 2 of my attempting to get caught up book haul. I'm also currently on a book buying ban. I tried doing one in October and I epically failed. However, it's middle November and I'm doing pretty well. So if you missed part 1 of this haul, I will leave it linked somewhere. And that's all about the used books that I acquired in the past couple of months. I will say there are some books that I will know a lot about and others I won't know very much about. I tend to go into books pretty blind, so if I'm a little lacking in my descriptions, I do apologize. I have a ridiculous amount of books here to haul, and my one defense is that some of these books have been needed to haul since like maybe July, so there's my excuse, and yeah, let's just get into it. The first book I picked up was The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. This is a classic, and from what I can remember, it's about a man who makes a deal with the devil or something to remain beautiful. Don't remember so much about this. I never had to read this one in school, but it was one that interested me at the time. And the other book with that was Dracula by Bram Stoker. This is the original Dracula, and again, I didn't read this in school. I chose to read Frankenstein, but I want to read this other monstrous tale. These next few books are books I got in subscription boxes. The first one is Sleepy Hollow and Other Short Stories by Washington Irving. I've never read this. I'm pretty interested to pick it up, but the time is kind of past now, so this should be a good Halloween read. The book that came with that was The Hearts We Sold by Emily Lloyd Jones. This story is about a girl in which the world she lives in, you're allowed to sell an organ to a demon to get kind of, I guess, a wish granted, and she actually ends up selling her heart to a demon, which is not very typical, and she ends up meeting this boy who also sold his heart, and they decide that they're going to try and get back their hearts, and there's probably going to be a romance. This isn't typically something I would read, but who knows, maybe I guess sometime next fall, a creepy kind of paranormal-ish read will be what I'm craving. I haven't heard too many reviews or thoughts about this, so this one specifically I would like to know if you've read it or if you've heard positive reviews. I'd really like to know. The next Owl Crate book was Before She Ignites by Jodi Meadows. I was very, very highly anticipating this book. It's a high fantasy featuring a woman of color who deals with severe anxiety and or OCD. I'm not entirely sure about if it's anxiety or OCD, and it's got dragons, so sign me up. I'm sold. I cannot wait to get to this one. I bought a lot of stuff off of Book Outlet in the past little bit because I'm addicted to them. Who's not? But this first little set of books, I actually got to go to the physical store, which is a treat for me, and yeah, I always love going. So the first Book Outlet book I grabbed was The Conspiracy of Us by Maggie Hall. I left the stickers on partially because I'm lazy and partially I thought maybe it would be interesting to see how much I paid for them. These are Canadian prices, by the way. I just remember Trina from Between Chapters talking a lot and speaking very highly of this series. From what I know, it's a secret society espionage trilogy, which I think sounds really fun. And I found the book for pretty cheap, so yeah, no, this one I think will be really good for when I want a really quick read. I was super happy to have found this one, and it is The Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler. This is an adult dystopia in which I think the world starts going wrong, as it typically does in dystopians, and then this new religion kind of pops up and it's really weird and culty, and I heard Katie from Chapter Stacks speak very, very highly of this one, and I got it for $2 in the scratch and dent section, so yeah, I was really, really excited for this one. The next book I was unreasonably happy to get, and it was Wind Witch by Susan Dennard. This is a high fantasy series in which there are like a couple different types of witches. One of our main characters is a truth witch, which is the most rare form of witch, which basically means she can tell if you're lying, which makes her a very sought after person. So I believe it follows her and her best friend. I'm very, very interested and excited to read this series, but there's going to be 6 books in the series and the 3rd book has been pushed off, I think, until 2019, so I feel like this is a series I could love, and I really want to start it, but I will have to put this on the back burner for just a little bit longer. The next book I grabbed I know nothing about, and it is The Grace of Kings by Ken Liu. This is a very popular adult fantasy series. So many people speak so highly of it. I'm pretty sure it's won awards. This one I'm not like ready to get to right away. However, I've heard so many great things about it, and I do want to get more into some adult fantasy. The next book I grabbed I have read, and it is Ghostly, a collection of short stories by Audrey, I can't say that last name. This anthology is 450 pages of different classic ghost stories. There are very few modern ghost stories, and I read this for Halloween thinking that I was gonna have a spooky read, but really it was more of a quiet, haunting. Stories were featured. I had a few standouts, but for the most part I didn't really love it, and I think I ended up giving it like 2.5 stars on Goodreads, so it was very middle of the road. Okay, the next book I grabbed is the last one from this part of the book outlet haul, and it is The Iron Trial by Holly Black and Cassandra Clare. Now, I love Cassandra Clare's Shadowhunter series. It is such a guilty pleasure of mine. I adore those books. But I haven't read anything else by her, and I haven't read anything by Holly Black. And so this one I've been very interested in. And this is a middle grade series focusing on a boy named Callum who, in his world, there is this prestigious school that everyone wants to get into, but he does not. And so he tries, when he has to audition for it, to fail so he doesn't have to go to this school, and the joke's on him because he gets in and now he's stuck at this school that he doesn't want to be at. I've heard a lot of comparisons to Harry Potter, which always make me nervous, but it's Cassandra Clare. She never lets me down. So I picked up Rebel of the Sands by Alwyn Hamilton. This was a cover buy. It's something that I've just adored this cover for so long, and it was $6 at my local bookstore, so I picked it up. I know nothing about it other than the fact that I've heard a few dicey things about the representation, so just so you know, I just don't know anything about this one. This was also an impulse buy, and it was How to Build a Girl by Caitlin Moran. Caitlin Moran is a very famous feminist. She talks and writes about feminism all the time. I've actually read about half of one of her nonfiction books, and while I was really enjoying it, I just wasn't in the mood for nonfiction. But this is her take on a fiction feminist story about how to raise a young girl, a young woman. The next two books I bought were in preparation for a signing that I went to, and the first one was Ramona Blue by Julie Murphy. I went to one of the Frenzy events that featured Angie Thomas, Julie Murphy, and Becky Albertalli, and all three of the women were super lovely, super sweet. It was a great time. And this follows a girl named Ramona who all her life has identified as a lesbian, and then one day a boy comes back to town that she was best friends with, and her feelings start to change for him. This is a story about sexuality and how it can be fluid, and so Ramona is very concerned and confused because she's fought for the title of lesbian for so long. I also believe that she lives in quite an impoverished place because I think Katrina had like destroyed her town. I'm very interested to see this. It was quite a controversial book when it was coming out, and frankly the book community didn't handle it so well. They basically outed Julie Murphy, which was terrible. I did forget to mention this is Own Voices for being bisexual, and yeah, I'm very interested to read about this story. It seems like it's going to be really great. The other book I grabbed for the signing was Simon vs. the Homo Sapiens Agenda by Becky Albertalli. I'm very glad I had an excuse to pick up my own physical copy. I'm sure everyone knows what this one is about. It's a very hyped and very deservedly hyped story on BookTube, and I'm thrilled for the movie that's coming out, I think in March. And before I forget, while I was at the signing, before it actually happened, I found a graphic novel that I've been searching for, and that is Love is Love, and it is a compilation by Mark Andreyko. This graphic novel was a response to the shooting that happened in Florida at the nightclub. Mark Andreyko is a pretty popular comics writer. He's known for one of his runs on Wonder Woman, and he's also a gay man, and so he contacted all of his comic buddies, he contacted a lot of famous people, and they made this really nice compilation about just LGBTQ plus pride and community. All the proceeds of this book were going to various LGBTQ plus charities, so I've been wanting to read this for so long, and I started flipping through it while I was waiting for the signing, and I nearly started bawling in the store, so I put it on hold. This is one that I really want to get to very soon, and it's very beautiful. The next books I bought, again, were impulse buys. Whenever I'm in Indigo, I'm going to buy something impulsively, even though I know I can get it cheaper elsewhere. Indigo is my kryptonite. The first book I grabbed was The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. This is an incredibly popular, award-winning high fantasy series in which I think the world is basically ending. There's nothing else that the people can do, like the world is ending, so they try to do their best with what they have. I believe this entire cast of characters are people of color, and I think our main characters are nearly all women, and that's just a really great thing to see in a high fantasy series, and I believe the series is being adapted for TV, so I need to get on this one. And with that, I also picked up Love and Gelato by Jenna Evans Welsh. This is just a summary YA contemporary that is set in Italy, and it was $6, and when I want something light and fluffy, I'll pick this one up. I won 2 Goodreads giveaways recently, and the first one was Something Like Happy by Eva Woods. This one came out early September. I actually don't know what this is about. The blurb says, a deeply moving tale of 2 strangers with nothing to lose and an unlikely friendship that will grab hold of your heart and never let go. I also won Top 10 by Katie Cotugno. She's a very popular YA contemporary author, and I've been interested in reading one of her books for quite a while now. This one, I believe, is about a boy and a girl who are best friends, and at one point in time I think they end up like sleeping together, and their confused feelings. Our female protagonist is bisexual, which is nice to see in like a high school setting. I was very happy to get this one. This one, I believe, came out sometime in October. The next 2 books I nearly forgot to haul, and I grabbed at the same time, were Night of Cake and Puppets by Laini Taylor. This is a short story that already existed in the Daughter Smoke and Bone trilogy. There was always an ebook for it, but they got it in a print copy, and this book is gorgeous, just let me tell you that. It's got stunning end papers, and under the dust jacket, it's beautiful. And basically this is just a 100-page story between 2 characters going on a date, and this is something I've wanted to read for a while, and ever since they released it in like hardcover, like I knew I had to get it. Fun fact, the illustrations done in this story are actually done by Laini Taylor's husband, which I think is just super cute and romantic and sweet. The next book is one of my most anticipated books of the year, and I will definitely be getting to it by year's end, and it is The Language of Thorns by Leigh Bardugo. This is essentially a bunch of fairy tales that Grisha children would hear while growing up. I've heard nothing but fantastic things. I cannot wait to get to this one, and oh, it's so beautiful. Okay, on to another Book Outlet haul. I made 2 orders from Book Outlet in the past little bit because, again, I already said it, I'm addicted and I love them. So the first book I grabbed was Unravel Me by Tahereh Mafi. This is the sequel in the Shatter Me series. It's no longer a trilogy. Yeah, I just plan on binging the series, and this completes at least the existing ones. I plan on binging them, and they're absolutely stunning books. All I really remember about this story is that it is a dystopian in which our main character cannot touch people. Like, if she touches them, they die. Very Kitty Pryde. I also grabbed Shiny Broken Things by Sona Chayapotra and Danielle Clayton. This is the finale and sequel to the Tiny Broken Things duology, which is about a very brutal, bleak ballet school, which I think just sounds super fun, and I kind of want more pink books. I just love that this book is pink. I grabbed The Last of August by Brittany Cavallaro. This is the sequel to the Charlotte Holmes series, I think it's called. I think I featured the first one in my last haul, not my used haul, but the one before that. And this is essentially a Sherlock Holmes modern retelling from the descendants of Sherlock Holmes and Watson. This series has been pretty well received, and I think it's meant to be a trilogy, but I'm not entirely sure. I've been really wanting to get my hands on this book, and it is Furthermore by Tara Moffey. This is a very beloved middle grade book here on BookTube. I believe the world is kind of Alice in Wonderland inspired, and our main character, she lives in a world that is entirely colorful, yet she is not. The only thing colorful about her is her eyes, and I believe her father goes missing, so she has to team up with a boy she dislikes, and I believe she just attempts to search for her father. I'm very excited for this one and Witchwood, which is the companion book. I picked up Tales from the Shadowhunter Academy by Cassandra Clare, Maureen Johnson, and oh, there's 4 people on this. Cassandra Clare, Sarah Rees Brennan, Maureen Johnson, and Robin Wasserman. How can there be 4 authors on one thing? This book bridges the gap between the finale, City of Heavenly Fire, and Cassandra Clare's newest series, Lady Midnight. That's the first book. The series is called Dark Artifices. It is a bunch of short stories talking about one character's time in the Shadowhunter Academy. If you're a fan of the series at all, this is actually a must-read to kind of fill in the gaps. It's also very enjoyable. It's not a book that you kind of have to like force yourself to get through. It's a really, really fun read. I highly, highly recommend this. It's really great. I grabbed Tiger Lily by Jodi Lynn Anderson. The only thing I know about this is that it is a Peter Pan-ish retelling of like a Tiger Lily retelling who initially is featured in Peter Pan and kind of isn't done any justice. Like in the Disney adaptation of Peter Pan, she literally doesn't speak. Apparently this is a very, very dark story, but from the few things I've heard about it, it's very, very, very great. And yeah, it's a different sort of retelling. I grabbed A Crown of Wishes by Roshani Chokshi. Oh my god, that's such a hard last name. This is the companion book to A Star-Touched Queen by Roshani. I've been meaning to get to A Star-Touched Queen, and this is kind of a sequel. Apparently her books are beautifully written, and I'm very interested in the mythological aspects that are introduced in these books. I believe Hindu mythology is explored a bit in these ones. Don't quote me on that, I may be wrong. However, yeah, no, I've been meaning to read these books for a while. Oh look, a book I've actually already read. I grabbed When Dimple Met Rishi by Cynthia Menon. I read this book near about when it came out from the library, and I fell in love. It was such an adorable, heartwarming contemporary. This is about our 2 main characters, Dimple and Rishi, who are both Indian American teens. One who kind of rejects the roles that are put on her, and then Rishi, who actually really loves and takes comfort in his culture. And they're both sent to this coding camp over the summer, and Rishi believes that he is actually supposed to marry Dimple, that their parents are creating an arranged marriage, but Dimple doesn't know that. And it's super cute rom-com, but I fell in love with this book. I'm excited for Cynthia Menon's second book, which I think comes out early next year. This book was really great. I do very much recommend it. I also grabbed When the Moon Was Ours by Anna Marie McLemore. Book Twitter kind of started talking about magical realism and like the origins of it, who should actually write magical realism stories again, and this book actually was recommended a lot. I can explain it to you because magical realism is like nearly impossible to explain, but I know that it's very, very highly recommended. I was intrigued by it, and when I saw it on Book Outlet, it felt fortuitous, so I, yeah, grabbed it. Okay, the next one I got was a little bit of a mistake, but when is there never a mistake in my book buying stuff? But I picked up Spindle by E.K. Johnston, and the reason why this is a mistake is that this is actually the sequel to the duology, and I don't own the first one, which I believe is called 1,000 Nights. I believe this is one of the earlier duology series, and it is a retelling of the 1,001 Nights story. The next two I grabbed were the School of Good and Evil books 1 and 2. This is A School of Good and Evil, and the sequel, A World Without Princes, both by Soman Chainini. I hauled the third book in my used haul, and at that point in time I hadn't owned the other two, and they popped up on Book Outlet for a decent price, and I've been really interested in reading more middle grade, and this is a pretty popular middle grade series. This next book I was again beyond thrilled to get, and it was from Owl Crate's October box, I think, and it is Wild Beauty by Anna Marie McLemore. When I decided to pick up her first book, When the Moon Was Ours, I really was wanting to read Wild Beauty, but I was kind of hemming and hawing about picking up a new book, and so then when it came in my Owl Crate, I was beyond thrilled. This is also a magical realism story, which I cannot sum up eloquently whatsoever, so I'm just going to take the recommendations from the people who have loved it, because this is very, very well loved, and I believe there are some own voices rep for bisexuality. These next books are a few used books I picked up after I had already filmed my used book haul, and the first one is A Discovery of Witches by Deborah Harkness. This has made the rounds. It's a pretty popular adult book, and I know nothing about it, but I just have seen it pop up in my feed recently, and it made me intrigued enough to pick it up. I also grabbed The Lotteries Plus One by Emma Donoghue. Emma Donoghue is a very popular Irish-Canadian author, and I already own 3 of her books, which I have not read any of them, but this was her first middle grade, and I think it actually came out sometime very early this year, so I was excited to find a new release. And if you couldn't have tell from my past 2 hauls, I've been in a very much middle grade mood, and I've been wanting to expand my middle grade, so when I saw this from an author that I've been very intrigued by, I snatched it up. And this next book was thrilling to find at the used bookstore, and it is The Invention of Hugo Cabret by Brian Selznick. This is actually a middle grade graphic novel that was actually read to me when I was in the 6th grade, and I believe they did a movie adaptation of it called Hugo, which I haven't seen, but I really, really loved this story when I was a kid. It's super expensive in stores, so when I found this in perfect condition at the store, I was thrilled. I have not read this in years, so I think I'd like to reread this soon, maybe possibly for Tome Topple. I also was tempted again in Indigo, because when am I not? And I picked up Magnus Chase, The Gods of Asgard, The Ship of the Dead. This is the 3rd and final book of Rick Riordan trilogy, which I haven't even started. I figured to possibly inspire myself to start the trilogy, maybe I'd buy the final one. That's just my excuse. I was at the bookstore and I grabbed it very impulsively, but I have been meaning to start this series for so long, so I'm really hoping by the end of the year. I'm kind of praying I can get to it by the end of the year. Do you remember when I said at the beginning of this very, very long video that I was on a book buying ban since the beginning of November and I've been doing really well? I did break it once, but I have a really, really valid excuse. Now, I am Canadian and I don't have access to certain exclusive covers that people in the United States do, so I went on a quick trip to the US for a day, and I went into a Target. I couldn't make it to a Barnes & Noble, which I am still kind of heartbroken over, but I made it to a Target, and they have a few exclusive covers and such that I don't have at home, so I bought a few books. But I think that's a valid excuse. Like, I can't get them at home. So one of the books I picked up was The Language of Thorns by Leigh Bardugo. This was kind of an impulse buy, kind of a I'm in a mood buy. I was like, you know what? I'm going to buy an exclusive edition of this book I haven't even read. And so the Target edition has a different dust jacket hardcover, and I think like an exclusive letter by Leigh Bardugo. I didn't need this book, but I guess a little bit bitter that I didn't get to go to Barnes & Noble, so I was like, you know what? I'm gonna buy this. Unfortunately, it's been too long for me to return my first copy of The Language of Thorns, so who knows? Maybe I'll give it away to a friend or something, but yeah, no. I really wanted this book, so I grabbed it. I also grabbed Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. This is not exclusive to Canada. We have signed copies here. However, I found a copy that was done in purple and said DFTBA, which is Don't Forget to Be Awesome. That is kind of like coined by the Green brothers, so I was excited to find this. I actually had already picked up a copy of Turtles All the Way Down, but when I found this one, I decided, no, this is the copy I'm going to stick with, and I'm going to return the other one. Final book in my haul. I really shouldn't have even bought, but that was kind of the name of the day. Anyway, it is Renegades by Marissa Meyer. Really anticipating this book at all. I read the Lunar Chronicles series, and while I really enjoyed it, this one really wasn't like striking me as like I need to pick it up, I need to read it now. And this is a story about a society in which I think they're like superhero type people, but they actually end up going like rogue and stuff. Yeah, I don't even really know that much about it. But again, this was a Target exclusive. Look at it under. It's so nice under the cover that I just like I had to get it. I don't know what I was thinking that day. So if there's anything you can take away from this haul today, is that I'm A, very impulsive, B, addicted to buying books, and that together creates some disastrous results. Or great results. It depends on which side of the coin you're on. I have been doing pretty well with my book buying ban other than those last 3 books I showed you, but yeah, I don't really plan to be buying any books for the end of the year. I don't need any more. I've hauled so many in like the past week. Like, it's ridiculous. There are so many books on my TBR. It's actually getting a little bit overwhelming. So I'd like to know of any of the books that I've featured here, if you are interested particularly in reading any of them, or if you've read some of them and you highly recommend them, please let me know, because my TBR is huge and I actually need a lot of help narrowing down what to read next. This haul has been insane. I really need to stop buying books. I hope you enjoyed at least watching which books I have bought in the past few months, and I will see you again next time. Bye.